to begin this respectfully and in a heartfelt way. As a seer, sometimes souls from the other side come and we have conversations. And most of the time, this is something I keep to myself. It's private, it's a private conversation. But sometimes when these spirits come, they have messages that are meant to be shared, messages of truth. When speaking of Alex Pretti, because that's the soul that came to me, I want his family to know that my heart is with them, his family, his friends, everyone who loved him. When a life ends suddenly, the shock moves far beyond the moment itself. It enters families, communities, strangers who never expected to care, and suddenly do. And when someone's final act is an act of compassion, an act of kindness, stepping in to help another human being, that moment carries meaning. That kind of humanity matters. It carries a message, it carries weight. And that's what Alex's spirit was trying to convey. If you don't know the story, basically what happens through multiple reports and through videos and things that we can put together is that Border Patrol agents pushed down a woman or otherwise forced her to the ground. Alex stepped in to help her up. While he was doing that, he was pepper sprayed. The officers were on top of him, multiple officers. And he had a license, Alex had a license to carry, so he did have a weapon tucked into the back of his pants. While they're wrestling him down after he's been pepper sprayed, one of the officers disarms Alex, steps away, and then shots are fired. And Alex was shot 10 times. I do not recommend looking at those videos. Just take my word for what happened. So based on public reporting, Alex was killed in Minneapolis during an encounter involving federal immigration enforcement officers, not specifically ICE. Border Patrol operates under Customs and Border Protection within the Department of Homeland Security. And during this immigration enforcement activity, there were multiple units operating in the same area. Regardless of the agency or the acronym, a man lost his life. A man whose final act was kindness and compassion to another human being, to someone who had been pushed down, to someone who was hurting, who was suffering, who was afraid. And as this process unfolds, the story, the narrative is already being shaped through language, through framing, through interpretation. He's being called a national terrorist. The media wants to control the narrative, but we've been here before, and we can see with our own eyes and know exactly what's happening. This morning, I received a visitation from the spirit of Alex Pretti. This was after I spent an evening sending healing light to the world, trying to really energetically instill world peace. And when his spirit came to me, I wasn't taken by surprise. I had been upset about what was happening in the world. And quite often, like I said, spirits come to me when they need something. So I immediately checked in with, what does Alex need? Does he need to be crossed over? What does he need inside of himself? And when I really tapped into him and allowed myself to connect to him, I was surprised because he looked strong. He looked like he was standing tall and proud, and he was strong. And I asked him, I was like, what do you need? And he said, I'm a hero. And he said, I'm a hero in a series. There will be one more. He said, I will be demonized. They will say that it was my fault, just like they did before. And there will be one more that they cannot disclaim. There will be one more that they can't disprove. And this will remove the power. That was his message to me. He looked good. We're breaking this apart now. He looked good. He said, I'm a hero. He knew, his soul knew that this happened for a reason, that he was making change, that he was making waves, and that the more people know about him, the more change can be created. But then he also offered us insight into the future. He's speaking about how all of these people who are publicly being executed by government officials, how they are being torn apart in their morality and in their ethics. And it's made to look like it's their fault. This happened just a month ago. And when it happened that time, she was torn apart because she was being aggressive with her vehicle. She wasn't a good person. She was out there protesting ICE. Even though we could see in the video with our own eyes that that man had a choice, that ICE agent had a choice, and he chose violence and death. And here we are again, completely different system. But when someone steps in, not to protest, but to offer kindness and humanity and compassion, to offer help without the violence, he's still a national terrorist. He's being torn apart. He had a gun on him. And so Alex's spirit told me, there will be one more. There will be one more that is unimpeachable, that they can't pick apart, that you can't deny in any way, in any capacity. And this will be the thing that topples the power. I thanked Alex's spirit for coming. I promised him that I would share this message with all of you, and he moved on. He's part of a legacy. He's part of changing the world. And what he really was emphasizing there was that this is not about a particular agency. What he emphasized was about the system. This is not an agency such as ICE that's the problem. It is the system. The system is broken. The deeper problem does not belong to one agency. It lives inside a system that prioritizes control over care, a system that moves faster than reflection, that turns people into threats instead of neighbors. There's different uniforms, but one structure. And at the highest levels, that structure becomes dangerous when accountability weakens. Power concentrates, oversight slows, narratives form before the facts settle. Institutions protect themselves, not life. When institutions choose themselves and power over the people that they're meant to care for and protect, this is how harm becomes normalized. And when harm becomes normalized, what happens to the morality? What happens to ethics? What happens to the value of life? Alex, in his message, spoke about leadership and responsibility and the truth that even the highest office in this country is bound to. And that's where the 25th Amendment comes in. The 25th Amendment was added to the U.S. Constitution in 1967. Its purpose is continuity and protection to ensure the country can function if a president becomes unable to perform the duties of office. Physical, mental, or cognitive, the inability to lead. Most people know the first parts of the amendment, succession if a president dies or resigns, but the most powerful section is Section 4. Section 4 exists for moments when a president cannot or will not acknowledge their own incapacity to lead. Under Section 4, the Vice President, together with the majority of the cabinet, can formally declare that the President is unable to discharge the duties of office. The Vice President immediately becomes acting President once that declaration is delivered to Congress, and there's no court ruling required. There's no impeachment vote required. And for those of you who are worried about the Vice President in this particular situation, I want you to know, here's a secret. Timeline workers have been working on the Vice President for a while now. For a while. And when this first started, I was confused myself. I was sitting there going, why aren't we working on the president? Why aren't we working on people who have more power? We were just guided to the vice president and started working timeline work, energy work, peace work on the vice president. And with this message from Alex, I'm curious. Section 4 of this amendment is intentionally difficult. It's designed for moments when the stability of the nation outweighs political loyalty. The Constitution does not define inability. These two things are important for us to look at. It's made for moments when the stability of the nation outweighs political loyalty. And the Constitution does not define inability to lead. This choice was deliberate. It allows the amendment to apply to real-world situations, cognitive decline, severe impairment, loss of executive judgment, or conditions that make safe leadership impossible. The public can't directly activate the 25th Amendment. There's no petition or vote that triggers it, but the public plays a powerful role in whether it becomes possible, because Section 4 depends on political courage, and political courage depends on public clarity, the truth that you know, that you see, and that you're putting out there. You influence this process by demanding transparency, by calling for congressional hearings, by communicating with elected representatives, by creating undeniable public awareness. When evidence becomes overwhelming and visible, constitutional safeguards become usable. We have to use our awareness. There has to be a big public outcry, because when evidence becomes overwhelming and visible and undeniable, unimpeachable in any way, constitutional safeguards become usable. This is what it's for. The amendment exists so no one individual can ever become more important than the people that they serve. And that brings us back to this moment. Peace is what we want, world peace. And peace, as I hope you're learning, is not passive. Peace organizes. Peace participates. Peace refuses numbness. It is seeking the truth. It is speaking the truth. It is crying out when needed, when there's injustice. In your call to action, I don't want you to fall into the darkness. I don't want you to focus so much on the darkness that you become dark, that you suffer. But we have to shine our light aggressively into that darkness in order to make change. Aggressive peace trolling. We need to get out there and turn everything into action. Everything that we feel inside of ourselves about these situations, we're meant to do something with. Whether it's physically taking physical action, signing petitions, contacting representatives, supporting oversight and accountability, voting with intention, raising awareness, making videos, talking about it, or whether it's energetic, transmuting the grief energies of the world, visualizing purple peace light covering the planet, that frequency of transformation that moves through the systems of power, working on future timelines for those who know how to do that, or whether it's emotional, holding compassion steady where fear dominates, being kind to every living thing everywhere you go, regardless of political alignment, because this is bigger than that. It's about a broken system that we can now clearly see and now do something about. This is about holding compassion steady, being kind, focusing on humanity, rather than the big business, rather than the tower and the power. Blessing clarity into spaces built on confusion, really speaking the human truth, not a political truth, but a human truth, an emotional truth, a kind truth. When darkness accelerates, light must become deliberate with an aggressive peace. So until there's change, I encourage all of you to live peace with courage, to live peace with truth, to live peace with boundaries, peace that shows up for humans, peace that blesses boldly, that cares loudly, love until distortion collapses under its own weight. Catch us choosing humanity again and again.